What up, guys? Welcome to the Son of Wonder. 2023 was chock full of all sorts of different movies from all sorts of different franchises, but today I will be ranking what I believe are the top 10 best of those movies, or at least of the ones that I saw. So let's conversationalize. Alright, guys, so this ranking is based off a few different things. Obviously, it's based off my own personal preferences, which movies I connected with more, which characters I cared about more, which movies I thought were more well executed, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm always gonna have a more personal bias toward, like, some of the superhero stuff, because it's not every year where I watch a ton of movies. This year, in fact, this past year, 2023, I watched some of the most movies I've seen in a year that came out in that specific year. And I felt like it was enough to where I could make a pretty well-rounded list of what I believed were the top 10 best, or at least my top 10 favorite movies of this year. And yes, I know that those are two very, very different things, but I'm kind of mixing them together and seeing how this goes. So let's begin. Number 10, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. This one was a surprising one for me. I had no intention of seeing this movie. In fact, that's how a few more of these movies on this list are going to go. No previous intention of seeing them, yet I ended up doing it with some friends, and I actually really enjoyed this one. It's a new kind of fantasy movie. I have really no interest in the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, but I do love fantasy, and so seeing a new fantasy movie that was in a different world than all the others, like, Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and Star Wars and stuff, that was nice to see. And I think the story that they tell with the characters particularly also is really well done. They feel like real people, even though it's in a fantasy setting. Chris Pine's character specifically has a really nice emotional story where he learns sacrifice in a sense. And so I think, also, I guess, to clarify, I might be getting into some minor spoilers for some of these films on my list. But he learns sacrifice in a sense, and again, I just thought it was really well done. They did a really good job with the magic system. I didn't think it was overly convoluted like so many different movies are now. And so, yeah, it was just a nice, fun venture into this fantasy world, and I really dug it. All right, coming up next to that, a surprising turn of events. Wonka, the Willy Wonka prequel movie that nobody asked for, but shockingly, against all odds, I think that they did a really, really good job with this movie. Now, like I said, I don't think anyone actually wanted this or was, wanted it at all. I don't think anybody was like, let's make a Wonka prequel movie. Everyone wants to see that. I don't think so. But I think the way they did it was really good. And if you're going to make a prequel, this is probably how you should do it. Funnily enough, I'm not joking, I literally, only like a couple hours ago, got back from the theater watching this movie, and I did not expect it to be able to crack my top 10, but it did, clearly, because it's on this list. I think that Timothée Chalamet, if that's how you pronounce his name, I'm not really sure, did a very good job at convincing you that he was like a young Gene Wilder. Now, I don't know if they're actually going for a specific prequel that's in the same exact world as the Gene Wilder Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie, but if they are, then I think Timothée Chalamet did a really good job of portraying a younger Willy Wonka, and his quirkiness and his slight craziness, even in the way he carried himself. I think he did a really good job. Also, I think this story really captures the nice whimsical nature of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the Gene Wilder one. I love the original, the Gene Wilder movie. I grew up with that movie, so I was able to me and my family were able to catch a lot of the beats in this one, especially the way they used the Pure Imagination song. I thought was brilliant. They set it up properly. And it's just, it's a really fun musical. I think what I really appreciated about it was it just felt like a movie that we don't get often, where it's just a nice live-action, kid-friendly film, which is kind of what that new movie that John Krasinski is doing called If, that coming out next year. That one kind of looks like that as well. But yeah, this one was just a nice, good live-action movie you could take the whole family to, and there's nothing to worry about here. It's all harmless, no agendas or anything like that. It was just fun, and again, they captured the pure imagination of the original film, so I really enjoyed this one. All right, Up next, Across the Spider-Verse. Now, I know all of you are probably, who have seen this movie, are probably going to be like, how is it this low on the list? That should be number one. I get it. For me, personally, my review of this movie was glowing. I loved it. And it was actually kind of surprising for me because I'm not actually crazy about Into the Spider-Verse. I think that movie's good, I just don't think it's nearly as good as everybody else says it is. So I went into the sequel a little skeptical. The trailers didn't really impress me. Watched it, thought it was amazing. I thought the twist at the end was brilliant, and I'm not really a fan of the whole Spider-Verse idea, but I think this is the best version of that idea. I think in this movie, they kind of find a way to almost justify the Spider-Verse's existence a little bit and make it more than just a gimmick. And actually add some emotional weight to it, something that each character from the Spider-Verse, these singular things that they have to face, and that define what it means to be a Spider-Man, and I did really appreciate that. I think the reason it's a little lower on this list is because in general, I don't really like the characters of Miles Morales, Spider-Man, and Spider-Gwen, and, like I said, the Spider-Verse in general, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I did really enjoy this movie, and the art style, the way they were able to use that, the animation was insane. And so for quality, I give this one a definite thumbs up. If I was ranking favorites, just pure favorites, it might be a little lower. But as far as best, I'll put this one at the number 8 spot because I did enjoy it. All right, up next, Godzilla Minus One. Now this is another movie on this list of many that I had no previous intention of seeing. It just kind of came out of the blue for me. I heard about it. I heard the buzz about it. I have no real interest in monster movies. I don't watch them by choice. But everybody was saying how amazing this one was, so I just decided to go see it. It is a Japanese-made Godzilla film, straight from Japan, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And I think the best thing that they could have done is what they did, and that is make Godzilla the actual bad guy. Don't overcomplicate the situation. Don't add a bunch of, other crazy details in here. I mean, I get that a lot of them are fun, like the Godzilla and Kong and stuff like that. I haven't actually seen any of those movies. This is, one of the only Godzilla films I've seen. But I really liked the simplicity of it. I liked the fact that they just made Godzilla the main antagonist, the only antagonist. He was the actual 110% bad guy of the movie, no question. And because they made him the actual bad guy, the actual force of evil, the driving antagonist in this movie, they were able to do a lot of character work with the hero that directly related to Godzilla. And they also made the hero not like a typical, I'm super brave and I'm going to go out and fight the bad guy. What makes him so compelling is that he is fearful of Godzilla, but he still decides to defeat Godzilla because of everything Godzilla has taken from him. And how much Godzilla is related to his own fears and his struggles, also related to post-World War II, this post-World War II Japan era, and having spent time in the war. That whole story is just such a compelling idea that they put in a Godzilla film, and I only wish they could have done the same type of character work with the humans in the Transformers movies. That hasn't happened yet. But I thoroughly enjoyed the story they told here. I love the payoff, the ending. I love happy endings. I'm a sob for that sort of thing. So this movie was phenomenal. Coming up next, Mario, the Super Mario Brothers movie. I think that this movie was an absolute triumph. And I think mainly because there were so many ways that they could have done this wrong. So many ways they could have messed this up. So many things they could have added or taken away that would have just ruined everything. And it's such a simple thing to get right. I mean, the characters from the games, there's only a hint of a story there. There's the very basic story in the games. Peach is captured by Bowser, Mario, and Luigi saves Peach, done. And that is exactly what they do in this movie. They just very straightforward executed the film in the exact way they should have based off the games. And I think what also helped this movie is that because the characters from the games don't have really that much characterization other than hero versus bad guy captured princess, hero saved princess, they're able to add a lot more characterization and use what little is in the games to motivate that characterization. They make Mario this guy who feels like down on his luck and stuff, but he's still like, he has this bravery and this grit, this determination, and they make him an underdog, but they make it a really good underdog story. And I think Jack Black is probably one of the best casting decisions as Bowser. One of the best casting decisions for any animated film ever. I don't think they could have chosen a better person for that. Peaches will forever be one of the greatest movie songs of all time. So yes, I thoroughly enjoyed this film. They used the mythology very properly, and very properly. I don't know if that's how you should say that, but they did a very good job with this movie. I loved it. All right, up next, Oppenheimer. Now, what I think that there are two main things that floor me with this film. Well, I guess, first of all, it's from my most favorite director of all time, Christopher Nolan. If he's making a movie and it's coming out in the whatever specific year, that has a very high chance of being on my top 10 list for that year. I love Christopher Nolan. I love his work so much. He's able to take such strange premises, something like that, and execute them in such a way that everyone can love them and be fascinated by this whatever world he's created. Obviously, master of the creator of the Dark Knight trilogy, which is like, one of the greatest, if not the greatest movie trilogy ever made. So there's that. And so this movie, I think there are two main things that really get me about this one. First thing is the technical aspect of this movie is absurd. The ways that Christopher Nolan finds to convey emotion and build tension is nuts. And like just stuff that I would never have even thought of he does in this movie. Second thing is, it's really a movie that makes you think. It makes you consider just how crazy this world actually is, that something like the atomic bomb could have even been made. And especially seeing it from the perspective of Oppenheimer himself, the creator of the bomb, seeing how dangerous he thinks it is, or knows it is, really puts it in perspective for you. Like, there's a difference between hearing about this whole event and then watching it play out in a story, in a movie format. The way Christopher Nolan created it was something really, really remarkable. Like, I have like nitpicks here and there, but overall, again, the technical achievement of this movie, the story stuff, the way that he was able to build that tension and really emphasize how threatening this bomb was to everybody and still is to everybody when it was used and when it was made. Like the terror that it gave everyone, I think was brilliantly done. So this movie definitely deserves its spot in my top 10 best. Next up, Gran Turismo. Now, this one was 110% surprising. Again, no intention of seeing this movie beforehand. I have no interest in race cars, or like the game itself, like race car simulators. No interest in any of that. But I do have interest in underdog stories and feel-good movies and movies that are based off true stories. And this movie is all three of those things and more. I absolutely loved this film. And I loved it for how inspirational it was. Again, I love happy endings. I love feel-good movies. And this movie is specifically designed for that purpose. It is a total feel-good movie. And again, just the specific underdog story that they tell. They got the right actors to do it. David Harbour as the mentor. Orlando Bloom is this sort of opportunist that you like sometimes and you don't like other times. And the kid himself, it all comes together really, really well. And, it's such an interesting idea anyway, like a video game simulator player becoming a real race car driver. Like, that's nuts. But I love the story they tell with David Harbour's character specifically, how he's very much against the idea at first. He doesn't think this kid is worth anything in the racing world. And the kid gradually impresses him over time until by the end of it, David Harbour is all there for this kid. He is fully supportive, and he's almost like a second father to this kid. And I just love that story so much. And like the relationships that the kid has with his actual father, and like some of the change that happens there. It's just so well done in a movie that I never in a million years would have expected to deliver such powerful emotion and in storytelling. So I really enjoyed this one. It is a great, inspiring underdog story. All right, next up, John Wick 4. I love this movie. I loved it. Keanu Reeves might be my favorite actor ever. I think just because of his specific personality, like the way he says things, like a surfer dude is really, really awesome. Guns, lots of guns. I love that so much, and when he brings that to an action franchise like the John Wick franchise, I am all here for it. And this movie does quite a few things that are amazing. First of all, the way it continues and sort of maybe kind of finishes the John Wick story from the previous films is probably the best way they could have done it. And the journey that it takes John Wick on, the sacrificial journey, to where he realizes that like this started out as being like some sort of retribution for him, but by the end of it, it's like the opposite of that. Like he basically gives retribution to everyone else. And it's just such a phenomenal way of closing out his arc. But it does it also in a way that does not like completely negate the fact that there could be a sequel, that there could be a further continuation of the story. I think they set it up so brilliantly to where if they want to end it here, they totally could, but if they want to continue, they totally could. Also, I mean, the action of this movie, good gosh. I mean, just the shot that everyone knows about at this point, the overhead shot of looking down from the ceiling at John Wick, going through a bunch of hallways, firing at people with the fire spray shotgun or whatever it is. Such crazy stuff. The car action, the stair fights, the opening where John Wick gets to use nunchucks, like all these ideas, like some of the best environments that they could have chosen for fighting, probably in any action movie ever. And also, even the villain here is super compelling. Like, even though he's younger, he still has very much a menace. Like, he's a menacing presence, probably because of his creepy French accent. But no, just the way he carries himself, I think he's the best villain in the John Wick franchise thus far. So, and obviously the side characters, Ian McShane is Winston, Lawrence Fishburne is the Bowery King. Might actually be my favorite character that Lawrence Fishburne has played is the Bowery King. He's just so awesome. They find moments of humor here and there, so I think this movie was an absolute triumph. It was beyond action fair. It was incredible. All right, next up, number 2. I'm gonna do it. I'm not sorry. Flash. Now, everyone has, like, so many people have hated this movie. They've dunked on it to death. I mean, they like the talk about how like the CGI is terrible and all that, and just like how it's not a good version of the Flashpoint story and all this stuff. I disagree, obviously, considering it's number 2 on my top 10 best of the year movie list. I loved this movie, and the more I've thought about it, the more I've actually liked it. Now, like, again, like Oppenheimer, I can have my nitpicks. I probably have nitpicks for every movie on this list, but at its core, I think that, I mean, obviously I'm always going to be a little bit more biased to the superhero stuff, and it's about characters that I actually care about. I want to see a Flash movie. I want to see Batman in a Flash movie. And the way they do Michael Keaton Batman in this movie, I think, personally, actually improves upon the Keaton Batman version of the character from the Tim Burton movies. Truthfully, I'm not the biggest fan of the Tim Burton movies, and I think actually taking Keaton Batman and putting him in a setting that's not, like, over-stylized to oblivion, at least in my opinion, improves the character. But definitely that's my own take on it. But also just the story that they tell with Flash as a character, I find really compelling. How like such simple things can lead to absolute chaos, and even just like Flash, his like this desperate desire to save his mom, and what ends up being the solution to all the chaos that is caused is letting go of her. That is such a compelling idea and such a compelling story. So when he has to say goodbye to his mom at the end, I'm going to be honest, that I got really emotional. And I mean, also, I lost my dad like a couple years ago, and so I can relate to being willing to do absolutely anything to get your parent back, and that's all of what this movie is about. the littlest things, the littlest changes can like change so much down the line. And also, the movie, I think I love it because it's basically like a superhero version of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Me and my dad loved Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And it feels like these two immature characters on this time travel adventure and all the shenanigans that come with that, not knowing what is going on at all, but it has the more serious superhero skin wrapped around it. So I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Maybe it has a little bit too much comedy, but the comedy was still funny. So highly entertaining, and I think a really, really well-told story. But number one, best movie of the year, in my opinion, maybe, is Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Now, I say maybe because, to be quite honest, I think like the top 5 on here, or maybe the top 4, could all be switched at some point. Could all be number 1 on a different day for me. But right now, I think this is probably the best. And I think, to be quite honest, I think part of my reasoning for that is it has a part 2 coming that I believe that this movie set up so well to where part 2 is probably going to be amazing and make this one even better. So it has that excitement of the story not being over and continuing. And again, like I said, when it comes just down to this movie, though, I think the ways that they continue the stories of the characters from the previous Mission Impossible movies were very unexpected, but also very interesting. I love the Mission Impossible franchise. It's probably still one of the best movie franchises to date. The fact that they can be on their 7th film and still have phenomenal like critical reception and everybody loves it and introduce new characters that are amazing. The fact that they can be on their 7th film and introduce a character like Grace, Haley Atwell's character, which I believe probably is one of the best Mission Impossible side characters, just because she starts out as a loner, she just pretty much only cares about herself, and because of how much Ethan cares about her and tries to protect her even though he doesn't know her, that compels her to care about other people. I think that is a phenomenal story. Also, I think I wasn't sure at first about the choice to make AI the villain of the Mission Impossible franchise, at least for 2 movies, because Mission Impossible as a franchise is a little bit more grounded than a bunch of other franchises. So making an artificial intelligence the bad guy like Terminator or Matrix or something, that does make it feel a little less grounded. But I think they did it in a way that made sense, and I don't think they overdid it. As well as I think that if they had made the movie any earlier, like even a few years earlier, it wouldn't have felt right. But the fact that they made it in the day and age that they did, I think that makes a lot of sense given the day and age that we're living in. But the story that they tell with Ethan, how he finally learns that he cannot save everyone, and he's honest with Grace concerning that, I feel like is an eye-opener for him. And again, it sets up stuff in such interesting ways for like where you leave off, thinking about like what's ahead. It's like, oh, how is this all gonna play out? It really hooks you. And I think it's a really good cliffhanger because you're definitely excited to see what happens next. And I mean, the commitment that Tom Cruise has to making his movies truly epic with all the stunts that he does. I mean, in this movie, he literally drove a motorcycle off a freaking cliff. He drove a motorcycle off a cliff. Like, just that sentence alone is just astonishing. And, as if he hasn't climbed the Burj Khalifa before. Like, come on. When you show that level of commitment to making your film awesome, I feel like just knowing that by itself makes your film better. When you see how much commitment the person has to being like, no, we're going to do this and we're going to do it for real, that only makes you have a better experience with the film when watching it. So I really enjoyed this movie. And again, it's also, I think its placement is motivated by what could possibly come later. But that is my ranking of what I believe were the top 10 best movies of the year. And again, I saw way more in 2023 than I was expecting. And a lot of it good, a lot of it bad. But these were what I felt were the best. It's been a wild ride seeing all these different ones. Lots of things that I did expect, lots of things that I didn't expect. But I want to thank you all who have subscribed to the channel. It means the world to me, just that alone. And sticking with me throughout all this year with my different movie reviews, as flawed as these videos are and as much better equipment as I need to get. Thank you for watching anyway. And have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And that is a wrap for for 2023.